Today's lesson is the myth of Diarmuid's betrayal. Hi, everybody. My name is Roger.
And my name is Helen.
And today we're going to talk about a traditional story from Ireland. It's all about the character of Diarmuid. Maybe you've heard of this. I certainly haven't. I don't have any Irish blood. I've got Dutch and Scottish blood, but I don't have Irish blood, although there are a lot of Irish people living in the United States and other parts of the world. So it's probably a good idea for you to know this story if you have Irish clients coming over, and if you can tell them about this story, ooh, they will be very impressed.
Yes, in school we mainly learn about Greek and Roman mythology, or stories from Greek and Roman mythology, which are known as myths. But we hardly ever hear about or learn about Irish myths. But there are many stories and many characters associated with Irish mythology, and it's really a good opportunity now to look at one very interesting story. It's a story that talks a lot about love and loyalty, and how people should behave in life, and to what extent should we follow our heart, and to what extent should we follow our loyalty to our friends, to people that we work for, to people that we trust.
Yep, there are a lot of morals and lessons to learn from today's story, so let's get to it. Without further delay, let's listen to the first part of our lesson, and then we'll come back to talk about it.
The myth of Diarmuid's betrayal. As the most beautiful woman in Ireland and the daughter of the king, Grania was surely worthy of being the wife of the great Fiann McCoy, leader of a band of warriors known as the Fianna. Still grieving over the death of his first wife, Fiann had arranged to marry Grania, and an engagement feast was prepared in their honor. On the day of the feast, Grania arrived willing to wed a bold young warrior, but she was not willing to marry the man she saw, a man past his prime, already old and gray.
大家好，在标题中我们可以看到单字 myth， 这个字是名词，指的是神话或是错误的看法或观念。例如 It's a myth that playing a flute after dark will attract snakes. 天黑后吹笛会引来蛇是个迷思。或者Several characters in the book are based on famous figures from ancient myths. 书中的几个角色都是以古代神话中的著名人物为基础。另外补充这个字的形容词 mythological, 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 意思是神话的。举例来说 The Loch Ness Monster is a mythological creature which is said to reside in the Scottish Highlands.据说尼斯湖水怪是栖息在苏格兰高地的神话生物，或是 The Chinese mythological themes in Britney's apartment looked corny. Britney 的中国神话主题公寓看起来真老套。接下来我们看到名词 warrior， 它的意思是战士、勇士或是武士。举例来说 Maori warriors had tattoos over most of their faces and bodies. 毛利族战士的脸上和身上大部分都有刺青。又或者说 Ancient warriors used to fight for land and honor. 古代的战士过去经常为土地和荣耀而战。再来我们看到单字 grieve， 这个字是动词，意思是悲伤或是哀悼。例如 Amy is still grieving over her dog, which passed away recently. Amy 还在为她最近死掉的狗狗感到哀伤。或是 Fans of the singer were grieving after she died. 这位歌手逝世后歌迷们哀痛不已。接着我们看到单字 feast， 它是名词，指的是盛宴或是筵席。例如 The king held a feast in honor of his army's victory. 国王举办一场盛宴来庆祝军队旗开得胜。或者我们可以说 The music festival offered a feast for the ears and was free to everyone in the city. 这场音乐季提供了听觉上的盛宴享受，城里的每个人都可以免费参加。另外这个字也可以当动词，意思是赴宴或是尽情的吃，大快朵颐。像是 To celebrate Kara's birthday, we went to a restaurant and feasted on roast duck. 为了庆祝 Kara 的生日，我们去一间餐厅大啖烤鸭。或者我们可以说 We feasted on local dishes during our holiday in Greece. 我们在希腊度假时大啖当地菜肴。最后我们看到名词 prime， 它指的是盛年或是壮年时期、全盛时期。举例来说 The boxer never lost a game when he was in his prime. 那位拳击手在他的全盛时期从未输过一场比赛。或者 No longer in her prime, the athlete decided to retire from the sport. 那位运动员不再处于巅峰时期，所以他决定从这项运动中退休。
So before we jump into the story, let's take a look at the title of today's lesson, which is The Myth of Diarmuid's Betrayal. Here, we mentioned before, the word myth refers to an ancient traditional story, and it's usually a story about gods and heroes and magic, and it's usually a story that has something to do with the origins or the traditions of a particular country. And we're talking about the myth of Diarmuid's betrayal. So the character's name is Diarmuid, and we are looking at his betrayal. Now, betrayal is the noun form of betray. When you betray somebody, especially somebody that needs your help, you do something on purpose to harm that person. So you betray that person when you harm that person. You can also betray your country. That's when you do something to harm your country or something that benefits your country's enemies. That's a betrayal.
Exactly. When you provide information to your country's enemy, for example, you would be considered a traitor or you have betrayed your country. And of course, the process or the act of betraying is betrayal. That's a noun. Okay, so we're talking about the myth of Diarmuid's betrayal. So let's get into our story. First of all, we're talking about a really beautiful woman. Here it says, as the most beautiful woman in Ireland, and the daughter of the king, Grania, was surely worthy of being the wife of the great Fionn McCoy, leader of a band of warriors known as the Fianna. So this sentence here gives us a lot of information. We do have a beautiful woman, and she's in Ireland. She's also the daughter of the king. And of course, because she's beautiful, because she's the daughter of the king, well, she is certainly worthy of being the wife of a really great man. If you're worthy of something, then you deserve that thing. She's certainly not going to marry some poor slob. She's going to marry somebody who's really a hero, someone really great, somebody who's noble. And of course, she deserves to be the wife of the great Fionn McCoy. Who the heck is that? Well, he's the leader of a band of warriors known as the Fianna. Okay, so this guy is like a general, a military general, a leader. He's the leader of a band of warriors. When you talk about a band of warriors, you're talking about a group of warriors, maybe a platoon or something like that. And of course, we've got warriors here who are fighters in an army.
Right. The word warrior refers to a soldier, usually from the past. So you would talk about Greek warriors, Roman warriors, or Viking warriors. It's more unusual today to call a soldier a warrior. You would just say soldier. So this Fionn McCoy was the leader of a band of warriors, and this band of warriors together are known or is known as the Fianna.
Exactly. So again, we've got the daughter of the king, and of course she deserves to be the wife of this great leader. But it turns out, as we're going to find out here, that she's not interested in him. However, Fionn, the leader of the band of warriors, is still bummed out about the death of his first wife, and I guess he wants to remarry rather quickly. If you're grieving about something, that means you're really sad about something, and that means you have grief. Okay, grief, G-R-I-E-F, is the noun form of this, and that just means sadness you feel when someone has died. You might experience grief over the death of your puppy, for example, if it got run over by a large bus or something like that. And to grieve, well, that's the verb. That means he's still feeling sad about his first wife dying. So he thought, I need to get married again. So he had arranged to marry Grania. and an engagement feast was prepared in their honor. So that happens sometimes, of course, if this guy wanted to marry somebody. Basically, the woman had no choice, so everybody arranged this feast, and it was in their honor. A feast, of course, is a big dinner in which they celebrate something.
Right, and if something is done in somebody's honor, such as this engagement feast, it is done to show respect for someone. So this feast was arranged to show respect for the couple, for Gronje and Fyeon, in their honor.
Okay, so we've got all these people gathered for this feast. They're going to have a big dinner. It's going to be a big party. And on the day of the feast, Gronje arrived willing to wed a bold young warrior, but she was not willing to marry the man she saw, a man past his prime, already old and gray. So I suppose she was excited to marry this guy because he's supposed to be the leader of a band of warriors. He's going to be a handsome devil. He's going to be really muscular and have a great haircut, and he won't have any pimples at all. He'll be the perfect man with a great salary. But she was disappointed when she actually saw this guy. My goodness, I don't want to marry him. He's a man past his prime, which means he's no longer strong and healthy. He's a little old, maybe in his 40s or 50s. He's already old and gray. And what young, beautiful woman would want to marry a man like that?
Right, so the word past their prime refers to the stage in a person's life when that person isn't really active or successful anymore. So it doesn't necessarily refer to old age because a lot of athletes, for instance, are already past their prime when they're in their 30s. Tennis players, for instance, retire in their mid-30s or before they turn 40. And for a tennis player, their prime in life is usually around from the time they're 15, 16 until, I guess, 27, 28. So prime isn't always associated with age. It's associated mainly with the time when a person is active and productive and successful.
Exactly. You aren't as active or as able as you were in the past, and Gronje is not really interested in this guy. What is she going to do about it? Well, let's find out and move on to the next part of our lesson. Let's listen.
Farther down the banquet table, however, Gronje spotted just the bold young warrior she had pictured when agreeing to marry, a member of the Fianna named Diarmid. In an instant, Gronje hatched a plan to make him hers forever.
So Gronje is disappointed when she realized that the man she was supposed to marry wasn't as young and in his prime as she had expected. Now, farther down the banquet table, however, Gronje spotted just the bold young warrior she had pictured when agreeing to marry, a member of the Fianna named Diarmid.
So there's Diarmid there, and yes, indeed, he is in his prime, and he's a member of the Fianna. He's not the leader, but still, he is a handsome devil, and she has the hots for him.
That's right. So in an instant, Gronje hatched a plan to make him hers forever. So she wanted to make him belong to her forever. And she did this in an instant, which means she did it immediately, without hesitation, without waiting. And to hatch a plan means to come up with, to think of a plan in secret. So it's something that's done in secret. But the word hatch also refers to when a baby bird comes out of its egg. When an egg hatches, the bird comes out of the egg.
Right. And of course, she can't come out and say, I want to marry him instead of this guy here. She can't do that. So she needs to come up with a clever plan to get Diarmid interested in her and to marry him instead of the person that they presented her with. And she's not satisfied. She does not want to keep the product there. Okay, that brings us to the end of the second part of our lesson for today. Let's move on now to the third and final part.
During the feast, she slyly drugged the wine of everyone except Diarmid, putting them all to sleep. She then asked Diarmid to run away with her, but he refused out of loyalty to Fionn. Gronje wasn't out of tricks yet, though. She cast a spell on Diarmuid to make him follow her wherever she went, and then ran off into the night, with Diarmuid close behind.
So during the feast, Grognier slyly drugged the wine of everyone except Diarmuid, putting them all to sleep. So this was part of the plan that Grognier had hatched. She slyly drugged the wine. So when you do something slyly, you're doing it in a way that's clever, but in a bad way. You're tricking people. You're doing something secretly and dishonestly. So people say, as sly as a fox, because a fox is tricky. The fox will trick you into doing something so that the fox can eat you. When you do something in a sly way, you do it slyly. What she did was drug the wine, which means she put drugs in the wine, and this drug made people fall asleep, so that when all of the warriors drank the wine, they immediately fell asleep.
So she then asked Diarmuid to run away with her, but he refused out of loyalty to Fionn. So, yes, indeed, sometimes if you're pretty, you might think that the guy is going to fall for you right away, but that's not the case here. Diarmuid probably said, well, you're a fine dish, you know. It would be great to be with you, but, you know, I'm a soldier and I've got to be loyal to my leader. So he did this out of loyalty or because of loyalty to Fionn. He turned her down.
Right. So when you do something out of loyalty, you're considering the relationship that you have with that person. Loyalty refers to the support that you always give to someone because of your feelings of duty and love towards that person. So couples have loyalty to each other, married couples, that is, and a lot of workers have loyalty to the company or to the boss that they work for.
Or a lot of bosses complain that their workers don't have enough loyalty to the company. But he was being loyal to Fionn. But Grognier wasn't out of tricks yet. She thought, I can still win this guy's heart. I'm not going to give up. So if you're out of something, you no longer have that thing. Gee, we better get some gasoline or we're going to run out of gasoline. We won't have any more. So she had a clever plan. She had another one. And she cast a spell on Diarmuid to make him follow her wherever she went, and then ran off into the night with Diarmuid close behind. So that's how she tricked him. She basically used some magic. She cast a spell on him, and of course, he was in her power, and he had no choice but to obey her. So this is where magic comes in. Grognier had some kind of magical powers here. She cast a spell on him. She used magic on him, and he became her slave.
So cast a spell on is a phrase that's often used to talk about witches. Witches often cast spells on people, and the spells can be good or bad. It's not necessarily a bad thing. So after Grognier cast a spell on Diarmuid, Diarmuid had no choice but to follow her wherever she went, and the two of them ran off into the night. So they had to escape, and they couldn't do it in the light of day because people would notice them. So they did it at night. They ran off into the night with Diarmuid close behind. So Grognier was the one leading the way, and Diarmuid was the one following her. He was behind her, but he was close behind, just not that far from where she was.
Well, it's a clever plan, but I don't think you can actually force someone to fall in love with you. Magic should be used wisely, and I think she's being irresponsible here, but that again is my opinion. Okay, that brings us to the end of our lesson for today. Let's turn things over now to Hanny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文一开始写到，身为爱尔兰最美丽的女人和国王的女儿，格洛尼亚确实配得上作为伟大的芬恩麦库的妻子。那么文中他用到单字 worthy 来形容配得上的，或者是值得什么什么的。那说到值得，同学们可能也会想到 worth 这个字。我们来整理一下 worthy 和 worth 的相关用法。首先 worthy 它表示配得上的，值得什么的。那常见的第一个句型是 be worthy of 加上名词， 像是 His achievements are worthy of respect. 他的成就值得敬仰。那第二个常见的句型就是用 be worthy to 加上原形动词。例如 Everyone is worthy to be loved. 每个人都值得被爱。那再看到 worth 它是表达价值什么什么，值得什么什么的。那第一种用法我们要表达值多少钱，这个用法可以是 be worth 加上金额。举例来说 The painting is now worth $5 million. 那幅画现在价值500万美元。那第二个用法呢，我们要表达值得怎么样的，这个用法是 be worth 加上名词或动名词。举例来说 The town is absolutely worth a visit. 那个城镇绝对值得造访。The novel is worth reading. 就是说那个小说啊值得一看。好，那另外有一个固定用法是 worth it， 它可以用来表达值得什么什么的，值得做某事。常见的句型呢是 something is worth it， 或者是你可以用 it's worth it to do something。举例来说 Do you think it's worth it to repair the car？ 你觉得这辆车值得修吗？好，那我们现在看完 worthy 和 worth 的用法，我们来整理它们的使用情境哦。好 worth 常常用来表达某事它值得某人去花费时间啊、金钱等等的资源。那么 worthy 则常常用来表达值得重视、值得支持、关注、赞赏等等这些抽象的事物，或者是去承认某事啊或某人他配得上什么什么。那我们常常就会用 worthy of 去搭配 praise、honor、respect 等等。所以现在如果我们要表达说你的努力值得赞赏，我们一般会用 Your effort is worthy of praise， 而不是用 Your effort is worth praising。 好，那最后再补充一下， worthy 也常常出现在字尾，像如果我们说 trustworthy， 它就是形容值得信任的， creditworthy 就是信誉卓著的，Noteworthy 则是形容值得注意的。好，那以上是今天重点整理，我们来回顾今天单字吧。
Myth. Edward likes to read myths about the Greek gods, such as Zeus and Apollo. Worthy. Our music teacher dislikes pop music and says it isn't worthy of so much attention. Warrior. The warriors cleaned their weapons in preparation for the battle. Grieve. The old woman was still grieving over the death of her husband more than a year later. Feast. The wedding feast was impressive, with many delicious dishes. Prime. The aging soccer player insisted he was still in his prime, despite his poor performance recently. Loyalty. Isabella's loyalty to her friends is absolute. She would do anything for them.
Well, everyone, today's article has come to an end, and I sure hope you enjoyed reading along with us. I am Roger.
I'm Helen.
See you next time.